We are going to go ahead and get started. I want to introduce myself as Sarah Batchelder. I am the moderator of today's event, and I wanted to thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the attendance of consumers, advocates, caregivers, families, supporters, and members of the media. Today's briefing is focused on a critical issue facing Californians who rely on full-spectrum therapeutic hemp products with non-intoxicating traces of THC as a part of their essential healthcare. As of July 1st, the state of California has eliminated access via direct-to-consumer channels to full-spectrum products while only allowing isolate CBD products to be sold. Today, we'll cover the difference between the two. Just know that you can drop questions in the chat for any of our speakers, and we'll have time to address them at the end of today's briefing. Earlier this week, the Coalition for Access Now submitted an emergency provision to Governor Newsom requesting immediate relief for Californians whose access to these products has been impacted by the recent changes to state law. The goal is simple: protect access to those who depend on these products while policymakers work towards a long-term solution. Today, you'll hear from families whose lives have been impacted by therapeutic CBD and from one of the country's leading cannabinoid researchers, followed by a time for questions from media and attendees at the end. It is now my privilege to introduce Paige Figge. Many of you know Paige as the mother of Charlotte Figge, whose remarkable story helped bring national attention to the therapeutic potential of CBD. Today, Paige serves as the executive director of the Coalition for Access Now, where she advocates for consumers while educating policymakers on CBD regulation. She has worked on the federal level, and her coalition helped open access to therapeutic CBD across all 50 states. Paige will provide an overview of why this issue matters and share the coalition's request to Governor Newsom. Paige, thank you for being here today.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Truly, we tried to do the rally in person. It was just so much easier and louder to amplify the volume to do this virtually. So I really appreciate being here. So as you all probably well know, California's new law has created an urgent access issue. My coalition is the consumer-facing nonprofit around CBD, therapeutic hemp, we'll call it today. Millions of people in California rely on this. In fact, the number is 5.4 million take a daily dose in your state. And these are, sliver of that 5.5 million people is very vulnerable, very medically fragile people, and at the worst state, who rely upon this every single day. So right now it's easier to access adult intoxicating products than it is with this new CBD ban, this non-intoxicating therapeutic hemp ban. And we're gathering today to call on, we always bring solutions. We're not activists, we're advocacy. We always bring a solution, a well-farmed out, legally bulletproof, backed by science, consumer-facing solution. We have been working with your state, your legislature, your governor for multiple years. We actually won in your process. We killed a CBD banning bill in session, and then the next day your governor banned it anyway. So when listening to that process of one person, it's so important to your governor to ban the manipulated product. They're looking to ban manipulated, I call it Frankenhemp. They want this out of gas stations. They want this off the shelves. In listening to that, we are pleading with urgency to do an emergency provision to remain legal, to remain accessible for CBD therapeutic hemp products. And so what we've done is as Sarah said, this week, we have sent a emergency provision language for policy solution to the governor, and we urge him to act compassionately with urgency. I will read to you a summary of that letter, just kind of staying out of the policy jargon. Apologies, I have a cold today. So this is my dear Governor Newsom letter that we're going to ask you also to sign on in support of. I urgently speak to you as a mother and as a leader of the Coalition for Access Now, a coalition of families, veterans, caregivers, athletes, and seniors to express alarm and to request immediate relief from the enactment of SB 378 on behalf of the millions of California residents who rely on direct shipment of hemp-derived full-spectrum CBD products to maintain healthy, seizure-free, functional lives. For some, these products have been life-changing. For others, they have been life-saving. I am one of those people who witnessed this firsthand. We have sent you a proposal for an emergency provision to safe harbor these products. This is not simply a regulatory issue. It is a public health crisis in the making. These Californians have built stable wellness routines around lawful therapeutic products that are formulated and sold outside the adult use cannabis market. We understand that many of these Californians have attempted to reach you, and their messages have been blocked by your staff. These voices deserve to be heard. More than a decade ago, in a desperate attempt to save my daughter Charlotte from the 1,200 grand mal seizures per month caused by her Dravet syndrome, and with a special forces husband deployed overseas, I found Israeli research about the anticonvulsant benefits of CBD derived from hemp. I worked with experts to grow exactly the hemp specifications needed to produce quality CBD oil that I then fed to Charlotte through her feeding tube. Then a miracle happened. The seizures that were seemingly never ending, it put her into hospice, all but stopped. For the first time, I had the opportunity to meet my own daughter as she became a healthy, joyful little girl. With the enactment of SB 378 on July 1st, 2026, families like mine, vulnerable citizens, their online access to full-spectrum CBD products has been placed at immediate risk. Critically, these consumers rely on direct shipment access, as they do not have practical access to equivalent products through licensed cannabis channels, and they otherwise have no recourse to these therapies. These Californians seek and deserve continued access to therapeutic full-spectrum hemp products that they have used safely and consistently, many under physician supervision, are terrified that your administration is cutting off their access. SB 378 reverses critical progress for families who rely on full-spectrum CBD therapies, whose therapy choices will be changed and limited, resulting in worsened health outcomes for people who already face significant medical challenges. Without immediate action, families across California stand to lose access to products they depend on for seizure and pain management, daily functioning, independence, and quality of life. And the consequences will not end at our state's borders. California has long set the standard for public policy. If access to therapeutic hemp is lost in California, it may become a blueprint for restrictions across the country and ultimately at the federal level. Millions of families are watching. For countless patients and caregivers, therapeutic hemp was not the first option. It was the option they found after everything else failed. Parents exhausted every treatment, veterans searched for relief, seniors looked for a way to maintain their independence, individuals living with chronic illness and disability spent years seeking solutions. Many finally found something that worked. These Californians should not be overlooked, and they should not become unintended casualties of efforts aimed at addressing intoxicating products. Today, they are afraid. They're afraid of being forced backward after years of progress, afraid that their voices are being drowned out by a conversation that does not reflect their reality, afraid they may have to move away from their home state. We respectfully ask that consumers who rely on therapeutic hemp stop being lumped together with the adult use marijuana and the intoxicating hemp market. These products are fundamentally different. The people who rely on them are different, and the purpose they serve is different. Many Californians are being told to seek alternatives at licensed cannabis dispensaries, but that is not a real solution. The non-intoxicating therapeutic hemp products these families rely upon are not available in dispensaries because they are not the products dispensaries are designed to sell. Nor are these consumers taking business away from California's regulated cannabis market. They are not choosing between therapeutic hemp and marijuana. They are choosing therapeutic hemp because it is what works for them. Preserving access to these products does not undermine state cannabis revenue. It protects a vulnerable population with unique needs that are not being met elsewhere. Many say that Californians still will have isolate CBD as a tool. It's critical to understand why this is not a logical response. Full spectrum hemp derived CBD products are not the same as CBD isolate products. Full spectrum formulations contain cannabinoids, terpenes, and other hemp compounds that work together to deliver benefits many consumers find more effective than CBD alone. Many individuals who rely on these products for seizures, chronic pain, anxiety, sleep, and overall wellness have already tried CBD isolate and found it ineffective for their needs. While full spectrum products remain non-intoxicating when properly formulated, they provide benefits that isolates often cannot replicate. Requiring consumers to switch to CBD isolate would not preserve access. It eliminates access to the specific products that support their health. For many Californians, CBD isolate is simply not a substitute. There is a simple solution we are asking you to consider. California can protect consumers, uphold rigorous testing and labeling standards, prevent youth access, and crack down on intoxicating products without cutting off access to non-intoxicating therapeutic hemp products. Governor Newsom, this moment calls for leadership and your compassion. We believe that this was an unintended consequence. You have the opportunity to prevent a public health crisis before it begins, to protect millions of Californians, and to send a message that families who have finally found relief will not be forgotten. I respectfully urge you to provide immediate emergency relief and enforcement discretion while pursuing a long-term legislative and regulatory solution that preserves access to non-intoxicating, full-spectrum therapeutic hemp products. These Californians have fought hard enough. They should not have to fight for access to the products that help them live healthier, safer, more independent lives in a state that they call home. Respectfully. So that is our letter that we are joining in support of, and we will share the link on how to sign on to support of that. But basically, we are trying to appeal directly to the governor. We want to show him, humanize that 5.5 million population in California of who this is affecting. I don't think the media has been getting that message across. It's been a lot of industry messaging. Is a critically urgent issue. We have like I said, a bulletproof legal policy solution, and he has that. Your governor has that as well now. And we're just asking to not wait until somebody is harmed or hurt by state law to carry this story. Let's not get to that point. Let's fix this now. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Paige. And as a reminder to anybody on today's call, you can drop any questions for Paige or for any of our speakers into the chat, and we can get to as many as we can at the end of this call. The next person I want to introduce is Stephanie Bone, a California mother and passionate voice for families who rely on access to hemp-derived CBD products. Stephanie's amazing daughter, Sadie, lives with Rett syndrome, a debilitating neurological disorder that causes severe seizures and other life-threatening challenges. After years of medical struggles, CBD helped transform Sadie's health and become a critical part of her routine. Please join me in welcoming Stephanie Bone, who will share her family's journey and why preserving access to these products is so critical for families just like hers.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Paige, and everyone behind this effort. This has been a long fight. I joined this effort in 2024 and flew to Sacramento and met with lawmakers fighting for my daughter's life. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here sharing Sadie's story. And I can't believe I have to still do this. I can't believe I still have to fight for my daughter's life. As Sarah mentioned, Sadie is, she's 12 years old. She lives with a disorder called Rett syndrome, which arises in toddlerhood. So after a very typical infancy, there was a cascade of symptoms that happened that caused a pretty massive regression. So she lost the ability to speak. She lost the ability to walk, to use her hands with any purpose, along with anxiety, insomnia, digestive issues, and epilepsy, and scoliosis, and the list goes on. This is a very scary disease because it continues, while it's not degenerative, it continues to progress and life gets harder. We weren't sure if Sadie would be afflicted by all of the things that Google said would happen to her, but she's a pretty textbook case. Um, at the age of 7, she developed her first seizure, and it was terrifying, even though intellectually I was prepared because it was in the list of things I should be aware could happen. Emotionally, you're never prepared to watch your child have a seizure with full body convulsions. We've ridden in many ambulances, visited many emergency rooms, and in all of those circumstances, doctors are trained to pump her full of drugs, heavy narcotics. And that is, she never tolerated them well. She turned catatonic, she was jittery and had spasms, and it was terrifying to watch. Um, Around that time, one of our neurologists had suggested that we seek out the guidance of an MD who specializes in cannabinoid therapy, and I learned all about it. And it was incredible and also shocking that none of our doctors up to that point had ever explained that to us. But we decided to try it because none of the other therapeutics were either appealing to us or worked. Doctors were suggesting their first lines of defenses, drugs that can cause rage issues, hair loss, drooling, catatonia. None of these were appealing to us. And Sadie tried several of them and they didn't work. So we visited our first, we didn't know where to go. And I took Sadie when she was about 7 to a dispensary in Los Angeles. I didn't have childcare that day. And so we parked the car. I put her in her wheelchair and we started to stroll into the store, and an armed guard pulled a gun on me. I had no idea what was going on. I thought I was being robbed at first. And as it turns out, you can't bring a child into a dispensary. And I didn't know what to do. Obviously, you can't leave a child in a car either. So I left and realized that the dispensary channel was not going to be viable for us. It was a very far drive in any case. And ultimately, when I did get childcare and went back, realized they don't carry any of the products that we needed for Sadie's care. We have since found a company called Miriam's Hemp, and we buy all of our products through them. And Sadie was seizure free for 3 years. It changed her life. She was able to go back to school and make friends and do swim class and do as many of the things her body would allow her to do that a typical child could do. It really was life-saving. And I just, to echo what I said at the top of this talk, as a parent of a child with disabilities, everything is a fight. I fight for the services she gets in her IEP. I fight for the services and supports we get with the regional center. I fight for durable medical equipment. This shouldn't be a fight. I don't want to have to fight my government to give my daughter something that has saved her life, that grows naturally from the ground, when her doctors, who are all wonderful people, are only trained to give her heavy narcotics that cause horrible side effects. This shouldn't have to be a fight. And I really hope that members of the media and lawmakers are either on this call or watch this and hear us. I'm begging you, because I need to have access to hemp in order to save Sadie's life. Thank you. Back to you, Sarah.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Stephanie. Our next speaker is Dr. Ryan Vondre, a professor at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and one of the nation's leading researchers on cannabis, cannabinoids, and their effect on health and human performance. For years, Dr. Vondre has conducted groundbreaking research examining the pharmacology of CBD and THC, including the differences between intoxicating and non-intoxicating cannabinoid products and how various formulations affect consumers. Today, he will help separate the science from misconception by discussing what research tells us about non-impairing levels of THC in full-spectrum hemp products. He's also going to explain the important distinction between CBD isolate products, which are currently the only option available under California's restrictions, and full-spectrum CBD products, which many Californians rely on because of their unique therapeutic products. Again, feel free to leave any questions in the chat for Dr. Vondre or any of our other speakers today. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ryan Vondre. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Sarah. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. So I've been asked to kind of come in as an impartial scientist to kind of speak to, the difference between CBD isolate and a full spectrum hemp product. And I think you have to also work in what else this is not, right? And so you have to understand that the cannabis plant is chemically complex and contains many different cannabinoids, terpenes, and other chemical excipients. So, by definition, hemp is a cannabis plant that contains less than 0.3% THC. So, trace amounts of THC exist in hemp plants by definition. Um, CBD isolate is just that. It's just the cannabidiol that's been extracted from the plant and isolated from all of the other chemical entities in the cannabis plant, or the hemp plant in this case. And a full spectrum hemp product in the traditional sense is something that's been extracted, a full spectrum extract is something that's been extracted from the whole hemp plant. And so it contains CBD, but it also contains the trace amount of THC and all of the other cannabinoids and terpenes that are found in that cannabis plant. Why that becomes important is because research has shown, and accumulating data is now keep coming, that a lot of those other chemical constituents aside from CBD can also be therapeutically beneficial for patients that are taking these types of products for an array of different health conditions. And that the amount of THC in a whole plant extract, typically at the doses used by these patients, is not anything that would cause intoxication or impairment. We've done controlled laboratory studies here at Hopkins demonstrating that. And we've done studies showing that some of those other chemical constituents, such as the terpene limonene, can be therapeutically beneficial for these patients. In longitudinal observational research that we've done, we find that the doses of CBD that people take in a full spectrum hemp extract or CBD oil are far lower than those needed to manage seizures or other health conditions for people taking a pure CBD product like Epidiolex. And it's orders of magnitude lower. So we found in one of our studies looking at people navigating and controlling seizure disorders, their average daily dose of CBD was 80 milligrams per day. In comparison to people taking Epidiolex are often taking thousands of milligrams per day. And where that becomes important is that CBD can inhibit the metabolism and alter the metabolism of other medications, and can also at really high doses for long-term use can harm the liver. So being able to use a full spectrum product to reduce doses becomes very valuable for these patients and families and navigating the health of them. I think it's also important to point out that not all cannabis and not all hemp is the same, right? And so each plant and the plant genetics vary in terms of the ratio of different types of cannabinoids and terpenes that are in those products. And that whole botanical extract is a functional medication by itself and isn't necessarily the same as the other plant genetics. And so when you talk to families who are using these products, right? The mothers that you're hearing testimony from today, Stephanie's daughter her health has been built around that particular product that she's using. And if you just swap it out with another drug that has CBD in it, she's not necessarily going to have the same effect. And you might increase the risk of adverse effects. And so it's complicated there. And so I think that it's important that we recognize that again, as Paige mentioned, millions of families have now relied on these federally legal hemp products to manage really debilitating health conditions in many, many cases. And relying on people to then go and find something at a dispensary that's regulated at the state level is not reasonable. These state-regulated cannabis markets are largely driven towards non-therapeutic high THC dose products. By nature of the regulation, high THC and the higher the concentration, the better is really what those markets are driven for. And that's where the money is for that industry and those dispensaries. And they really just don't carry the products that these families have come to rely on. Now, my history in working with cannabis and doing cannabis research really was focused on cannabis as a drug of abuse and studying intoxication and impairment. And I recognize, and everybody should recognize, that there is that potential for abuse and misuse of THC-containing products. But the reality is that we have to look at the route of administration, the dose of THC, the format and the cost of the retail product in terms of determining the likelihood of misuse and abuse. And in the case of CBD oils, there's really no evidence ever anywhere that I'm aware of that those products are abused by adolescents or young adults. That is not a product market where you're seeing diversion, where someone is stealing a kid's seizure medicine to get high. The reality is the amount of THC in these products is very low. It's not rewarding and reinforcing in the same way of buying a vape pen or getting a joint and smoking it is. And so, the consequence of all of this is that these CBD oils, a bottle of which could contain 30 or 40 or even 50 milligrams of THC, but that's a month or more drug medication supply for these patients. If a teenager were to drink that whole bottle, would they get high? Yes, they would, but it doesn't taste good and it's prohibitively expensive. It costs about $200 retail. So the access that adolescents and young adults have to THC dominant, primarily inhaled products, that is what is misused and abused, and not these CBD oils. And so I think that there is a very clear path on the regulation side to preserve access to these medicines while doing everything that's appropriate to eliminate the inappropriate products that are purportedly derived from hemp, things that are vape cartridges that are hemp-derived delta-9 THC, contain delta-8 THC, hexahydrocannabinol or HHC. Those are poorly regulated products that were never intended to be part of the hemp industry and the hemp retail space. Those are products that are manufactured by individuals who are intentionally circumventing the law to try to provide intoxicating products to people in the space of an area where it was never intended to be. And so it's fully appropriate to revisit hemp regulation, and that's being done at the federal level and at the state level across the US to eliminate delta-9 THC products, to eliminate delta-8 THC products where those are the primary chemical constituents. But these products where it's a true hemp product in terms of a full plant extract, the primary ingredient is CBD, trace amounts of THC that are not going to intoxicate or impair anybody, and there's negligible, if any, risk of abuse or diversion. I think those are the key things here, and so I'll stop there and Sarah, let you kind of take back over.
Thanks so much, Dr. Vondre. And again, if anybody has any questions, follow up for Dr. Vondre or anybody else on today's call, feel free to drop those in the chat. Our next speaker is Nicole Brona, a California mother whose family has experienced firsthand the life-changing impact of access to full-spectrum CBD. More than a decade ago, Nicole's incredible son, Brett, was suffering more than 600 seizures every single month. After exhausting all treatment options available, Nicole turned to full-spectrum CBD. Nicole joins us today not only as a mother, but as an advocate for families who depend on access to safe, non-intoxicating hemp products. She's here to share Brett's story and why preserving access matters so deeply to families across California. Please join me in welcoming Nicole Brona. Hi, Nicole.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here today to tell you Brett's story. And I'm also happy to be here today to represent the thousands of other families who have been accessing full spectrum CBD hemp products for over a decade. And they have similar stories like Brett. In 2013, like Sarah said, Brett was having over 600 seizures per month. And at this point, Brett had failed multiple seizure medications, and we were quickly running out of options. Multiple doctors had predicted a lifetime of severe disability, and we were told to accept our new normal. At this time, Brett was nonverbal. He was not toilet trained. He was unable to meet his milestones. He was unable to learn new things, and he was falling down all the time. In 2013, we also learned of Charlotte's story, and her incredible story. We were living in California and we were able to access full spectrum CBD hemp products. Brett went from 600 seizures per month to 0 for 3 months. And after 3 months, they came back, they were far and few between. We were able to wean down Brett's hardcore seizure medications. And after years now of being on full spectrum CBD hemp products for Brett, Brett talks, Brett reads, Brett runs and plays. He plays baseball. He tells me he loves me with his own words. He laughs. Brett's an incoming 10th grader at a public school setting, and he is living his best life. And that's why I'm here speaking out. For kids like Brett who have exhausted all efforts and they want to access full spectrum CBD hemp products, I'm again speaking out for the thousands of families who've been accessing these products for over a decade. Parents shouldn't have to worry about losing an essential part of their child's care. So my message to Governor Newsom is simple. Therapeutic hemp products are not the same as intoxicating products. Thousands of families depend on these products. Please preserve access while long-term solutions are being developed. We are asking for your support for the Coalition for Access Now emergency provision. We are asking to protect consumers while maintaining access for families in need. I want to emphasize that years of progress are at risk here. Families like mine should not be pushed in a corner and be in crisis mode. Children like Brett deserve to keep their quality of life that we've worked so hard to achieve. So I just want to thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Paige, for asking me to be here today. And I'm going to send it back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate you sharing your story today. As we conclude our speakers today, we've heard directly from families, patients, advocates, and experts about what is at stake for Californians who depend on therapeutic hemp products. We've also heard that protecting consumers and preserving access do not have to be mutually exclusive goals. To close our program, we're honored to welcome Paige Figge to leave us with a final message. After Paige's remarks, I will be opening the floor to just a few questions. If we don't get to all of our questions today, media can reach out to me directly. I'll drop my email in the chat with any questions that haven't been addressed today for any of our speakers, and I'm happy to get you a quote or a statement, whatever you might need. And then if anyone wants to get in touch with Paige directly to learn how they can help, you can reach out to her via her email, which I'll also drop into the chat. Now over to you, Paige. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Stephanie and Nicole. And Dr. Vondre, really always appreciate your work. I drag Dr. Vondre everywhere I possibly can. In closing, I would just urge your governor to be compassionate. Take a look at our policy solution and meetings we've had over the past few years. The message from that office is we have no intention of harming this category of medically fragile people, of therapeutic hemp. And yet that's where we are. I would like him to take up this policy solution or nitpick it, shoot holes in it, come up with your own. I would like California to be the model state bill. And we'll take this to every other state. You'll be the blueprint for every state. We'll take this where I typically work in Washington, D.C. We'll take this to Congress as a model. We'll take this to the President of the United States. They are urging us to fix the state of California as fast as humanly possible. But I really just wanted to thank you all. I know consumer advocacy can be difficult. I know firsthand. But it works. And so I'm very, very proud to stand with this team of experts every day. We've been doing this 16 years. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paige. All right, I do have a couple of questions that have come in through the private chat, but if anybody on this call today has any additional questions you'd like to see answered, feel free to drop them in. I think this question is best served for Paige. What response has CAN received from the governor's office, the Coalition for Access Now, up until this point?
So a couple things. Again, first, we've heard that they had no intention of harming this category. They tell consumers who feel harmed by this language to go to dispensaries, move out of state, or use isolates, which we've answered. I feel like we've answered those three options that they've offered you. The other message is we did an unbranded call to action that many of you have signed onto. It sends you to a phone call, and you can call the governor. It sends you with a script. It sends you to an email with a letter to the governor. Though that was blocked multiple times. So that is why we're here doing this in a different route, through a letter, a policy letter solution, and with media and a town hall. And so the answer is we don't intend to harm you. Here's some other places you can access this, which are not viable, we know, and blocking all of your outreach. You can still reach him on his email and phone separately from our call to action. But I guess what his message is to us is he just doesn't want to hear anymore complaining about it.
Okay. I do have one more question in the chat for you, Paige, that I think is probably a fit. This is from Alula. She is curious about the specific bills this coalition opposes, and she's dropped some of the language, some additional questions into the chat. If you want to take a swing at that.
So the question is, I mean, in the language in the law itself is this: there's no detectable amounts of THC can be shipped. The onus is on the consumer to go find another source, stockpile, break the law, cross state lines, move out of state. These are not viable options for a medically fragile family. Obviously, the letter of the law is clear. Every company that I have spoken to that does not have a marijuana operation in the state of California has pulled out, has sent letters to there are hundreds of thousands of consumers per company. We're not shipping to your state anymore. And the vast majority of that 5.4 million people in the state of California who use CBD daily get it shipped to their door. They're not going to dispensary. So the products do not exist being shipped. They are not being shipped into the state of California. The penalties are so severe that it's per penalty. It's the penalty is per offense, and so they're company breaking offenses, company breaking penalties. They cannot withstand how severe those penalties are. It was very well intended how that language was written, was to collect this market and state marijuana dispensaries and collect that tax money.
Perfect. Thanks, Paige. I do have another question that just came through the chat. Someone is asking, what happens if no action is taken? And I think Stephanie would be a powerful person to answer this on how this will affect her family directly.
I wish I had a better answer than Sadie's life becomes very different. She will likely experience seizures again. I think I would say every other day I look at the family forums of other Rett syndrome families, and there is an announcement that a girl has lost, or a child has lost their life from this disorder. And it's my understanding that many of those lost lives are due to seizures. So this is something that I carry in my heart and that gives me extreme anxiety. I am holding on to full spectrum hemp with all I can and doing everything that I can to support the efforts that Paige is leading. My father was a law enforcement officer his whole career. I'm not about to break the law. So those are not viable options for me. We really don't want to leave the state of California, but that would always be an option. I would go to the moon for Sadie, and if that's what I have to do, then that's what I have to do. I have been stockpiling hemp products with the fear of what actually happened on July 1st. And so I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and I have about probably 3 or 4 weeks supply left. And so I actually reached out to our doctor yesterday to ask if I should start weaning her off, because it would maybe be too shocking to just all of a sudden stop. And so I'm already thinking of those options. But what I won't do is subject her to medications that will create a cascade of even more difficult side effects, like I described in my remarks. So I don't have an answer other than I'm terrified, and this is life or death for us.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Stephanie. I think to round out today's conversation, I would love to throw that same question over to Nicole just to hear her take. And then again, if there's any additional questions that anybody would like to see answered, feel free to send me an email and I will get you a response. Over to you, Nicole.
Sarah, our answer is similar to Stephanie. I've been stockpiling as well, in fear that July 1st would happen, and it did. And so we would have to move. We would have to pick up and move to a different state, because the same situation with Brett, where he has exhausted almost every single seizure medication, and he has an effect where a lot of times those medications worsen his seizures or start new seizure types. So I'm here to help Paige do whatever it is possible we can do. And I'm praying that Governor Newsom listens and we set the standard so across the board, everybody can access the medication they need to for their families. But I'm stockpiling and we would have to move. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. All right, that concludes today's briefing. And again, if there's any additional questions that come through, I will redrop my email into the chat, as well as the email to reach Paige directly. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who took the time to join today's call to bring awareness and hopefully, have you have some thoughts about this very important topic. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Have a great day.